I would like to invite you to keep one principle very clear. Let's be positive. The most difficult today is to be positive. There's so many good reasons to be critical and to be angry and to be shouting and to be protesting and to stop going to school and to start telling, don't do it. Don't let your energy go into the negative. Let's use our energies to be positive. Because in whatever there is negative, there is always a positive. The absolute bad does not exist. That's hell, and that's not here. The absolute good doesn't exist either. That's heaven, and we have to die to get there. And we're not going to do that now. So, to me, very important is that whatever we have as a principle, let's look for the good. Let's look for the positive. And that's how I approach reality. And it's you and me, we decide if it's going to be positive or negative. That's all in our mind. And if we are not able to switch the mind from the negative to the positive, we will never have the transformations in our economy, in our society that we like to have. So first, an invitation, be positive. Even if you have a lot of reasons to be very negative and very aggressive, forget about them. Move on. Second principle, though, is that in order to be positive, you have to have an inspiration. Something needs to inspire you. And something needs to surprise you. Because an inspiration is only an inspiration when it has inspired you. One of the greatest principles in my life has been to trust that I'm on the right track. And I say, no, not track, that I'm on the right wave. If you have a great idea and you're going to force people to follow your great idea, then you are the one who creates the waves. If you want to create waves, you'll get tired before you get anywhere. And you'll be bankrupt before you ever get anywhere. And to save yourself, you may want to have some government subsidies or some international NGO to give me some money. That's not how we're changing the world. That's how we create dependency, and that's how we're not moving anywhere, except on the agendas of someone else. We need to understand that life is about finding the currents, the forces, the waves that are there, and you turn into a surfer. Success depends on your capacity to surf the waves. And I think there are enormous waves today in society that we just haven't understood. We haven't grasped nor seen them. And it's this discovery of the waves that gives you the energy to go very far because you're using the energy of everyone else. If people ask me, how can you do what you do? It's because I get all the energy from you. I don't need energy, I just take yours. So if you feel tired after my lecture, you know where the energy went, in me. And I think this is very important. Riding of the wave is something that has to be the riding of the positive waves. You can ride the negative waves as well, but what we want is better. We want to know that if we have the wolves, we will indeed have better rivers. But by the same token, there's so many things that we do not really understand. But once you get going, you know that it will carry you very far. When I launched the idea in 1991, I wrote the first article about zero waste and zero emissions. 91. I launched the concept of a factory that has no waste and no emissions. I launched the concept of a shop that has no waste or emissions. No plastic packaging, 1991. I was called way too early. But today we know that people are quite hungry to get rid of a lot of the excesses. And it is important that someone basically started talking about it. But when we talk, we have to do. And this is where so many people have difficulties. We talk about the great ideas, we talk about the great concepts, we don't apply them ourselves. We don't put them into practice. And so I had the luxury in 1991 to create this first factory that was zero waste and zero emissions. It was a detergents company, and all our wastewater was treated on site, and we were obliged by law to have a connection to the sewage system. And since I didn't make the connection, they didn't give me a permit to operate the factory. So I had to make the connection to get a permit so that I could use my own wastewater to put water on my roof, so that by irrigating my roof continuously, I would have the evaporation in the summertime and would keep the inside cool, and I would create an igloo effect in the wintertime. And for that, I needed to have my own water. Because if I would use tap water for that, on top of that would be chlorinated, and that would not be good for the plants. So therefore, I would needed to have my own water treatment plant. But by the way, we were using all our waste, which had to be biological, because otherwise I couldn't pump it up. So I had to be a bio company, because otherwise I couldn't irrigate my roof and save energy. You see where we're going? This kind of interconnected thinking is how life is about. Fritjof Capra, my friend, called it the web of life. La trama della vida. The web of life is really seeing that everything is so incredibly interconnected, but don't try to understand it all. Just move in the mazes of it and make certain that you get results. In 1991, I was the first company that had zero emissions, also from all transport. Zero. And one of the things we had to do was motivate people to go on a bicycle. And I was being told that, getting people, all people to go on the bicycle is impossible. Well, let me be very clear with you. If you tell me it's impossible, I'm interested to do it. If you tell me it is possible, then I say do it. But if it's impossible, I'll do it. And so what happened is I just had to make a very simple calculation. I paid my staff €0.50, 50 euro cents per kilometer to ride the bicycle to work. You know what? For €0.50, everyone on the bicycle. Even in the winter time when it's cold, everyone on the bicycle. Because €0.50 is €0.50, and you could only get it if you do it all year. And of course, then I had these people telling me, but that's very expensive. Can you imagine €0.50 per kilometer per worker? I had 120 staff. And I had to tell them, excuse me, let's make some economic analysis. I'm economists, Let's make some return on investment calculations here. I said, what? You mean it's only costs? No. There's something called the substitution cost. So normally, if I would have had 120 parking places, I would have had to buy the land for 120 cars. I would have to put up a gate, security, light systems. And if you add all the costs of everything, you know how much it was? €0.50 per kilometer for 5 years. And what's my return on investment, the economist asks me. Return on investment? The health of my workers. If my workers are exercising 2 times a day, they're going to be in much better shape. If they're doing it in the winter, in the rain, in the summer, in the sun, they're going to be ready, healthy, exposed to the 4 seasons. Nothing better than being exposed to the 4 seasons. This is what our immune system requires. And what is my return on investment? Healthy people. And if I have healthier people, what happens to my productivity? It goes up. What happens to my loyalty as a worker? Well, people getting €0.50 per kilometer, people don't want to change company. They're going to stay with you. So I have a better loyalty of my staff. Now, if you have healthy and loyal people, what does it do to your company? Great things does it do to your company. You don't need an American scientist to come and explain that to you. And to me, this is how we have to start thinking. We have to think not just in the benefit in cash. We have to understand all the benefits that also in the end of the day could translate into cash. But it was not the return on investment that motivated me day one. It was to have a company where people are happy and motivated and have a story to tell. And I had, of course, television stations hiding in the bushes to see if on a rainy day these people are still coming on a bicycle. Fortunate for me, they came, fortunately. You know, I have to tell this story in just about any presentation that I do, because in 1992 there was the very famous UNCED conference, the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. And in 1992 I was the guest of honor because of this factory. Because I was competing against Procter & Gamble, I was taking market share, and I wasn't doing advertising. Because I didn't believe I had to wash the brain of the lady to convince her that she should wash with my detergents. I mean, why do we have to brainwash people to buy a product? And so there I was next to Jane Fonda. That was a big thing for me at the time. There I was next to Jane Fonda, and there I was next to all these heads of state, and everyone was celebrating. But the year after, I was in Indonesia, because I had become the biggest buyer of palm oil in my country. And when I was in Indonesia, I realized that I was not the guru I thought I was. I was actually responsible for the destruction of the habitat of the orangutan. And that was the shock. But that was not my biggest shock. The biggest shock was that I came back home and I went to Greenpeace and I said, let's do a campaign against me. And Greenpeace looked at me and said, you want a campaign against your company? I said, yes, I mean, what better is there than if I say, I'm sorry, I didn't understand it, I'm wrong. Would you please accuse me? Would you please question me and force me to change? And Greenpeace said, no, it's not part of our 5-year plan. Then I knew that it was time to leave the NGO world for what it is and to focus on creating something that was more action-oriented and research-oriented. Because I did not know that I had this devastating impact creating this demand for palm oil. I didn't know I had this devastating impact, but now comes the moment of the ethics. If I don't know, it's an unintended consequence. But once I know and I continue, it's collateral damage. It's like shooting guns at a soldier knowing that there are human beings and communities around and I'm killing them as well as the soldier. That we can't do. Collateral damage cannot be tolerated. That's not ethical. And as businesses, so many of our businesses know they're doing damage, and you know what the response is? We'll do less damage. And I'm very sorry, I don't get this. Could we please have some Jesuit priest or some Buddhist monk explain what ethics are? Doing less bad is bad? There's not something like doing less bad. Or do you have a lot of cancer or a little bit of cancer? Cancer is cancer. If I'm stealing and I'm stealing less, I'm still stealing. I mean, how can I pretend that I'm doing less bad and I'm good? But this is the philosophy that we apply in society today. We're minimizing waste. We're reducing pollution. I don't get it. No waste and no pollution. And that's why I launched in 1994 the Zero Emissions Research and Initiatives. Because we cannot separate the initiative from the research. So the organization that I'm leading now since 1994, it's 25 years this year, the organization that I'm leading is really seeking to understand to the best of our abilities the science that is available and the science that needs to be made available. I'll give you one concrete example. Plastics. I hope none of you is using plastic bottles here. I'm just looking around. Thank you, sir. That was the last one for your life. That's the last one in your life as well. I mean, when you drink 1 liter of that water, you have ingested between 3 and 10,000 microparticles of plastic. Every bottle. Even when it's Evian, even when it's San Pellegrino, you know, doesn't make any goddamn difference. They all have exactly the same plastics. And they were approved at a time when we didn't know how to look for the microplastics. So they're using the approval of the 1980s to make you drink something that is mummifying your liver. I mean, it's not about plastics in the sea, it's not about plastic, it's plastics in your liver. I mean, you know what it is to mummify? Mummify means you pump up after someone died, pump them up with polymers so that they will not decompose. Well, that's what we're doing now when we're alive. And so my question is, how now we're getting all these microplastics out of the system? So that is what I'm asking my scientist friends. Help me figure out how to get it out. Because they're telling me that with filters we can't do it. With osmosis we can't do it. And so when people tell me it can't be done, I'm getting interested. So I'm happy to report to you that we're having the first 10 platforms in the sea where we're farming seaweeds. The gross, thick seaweeds that, amazingly, when a seaweed has a place to hang on to, it grows. I mean, isn't it nice? Just create a platform it can hang on to. Anyone who has a boat knows it. Anyone who has a boat knows that after a few weeks, the barnacles and the seaweeds are growing on the bottom of the boat. So we were saying, well, if that's what's happening to the boats, what if we just create these platforms? We now have the first platforms in the south of Morocco, where a lot of plastics arrive, microplastics arrive from North America. And 80% of the microplastics are adsorbed, are sitting on the surface of those seaweeds. Now here comes the economist and says, it's a very expensive process. There's no one who's going to pay for it. That's the moment when I say, can the economist in the room leave the room and let people do the job who want to do the job? Because as long as I have to listen to their economic analysis, then no one is ever going to do anything but what we're doing today. So if someone in this phase says it's expensive, then I'm asking them to leave the room. The first ones to say it's not possible, then I'm interested. When they say it's expensive, I tell them to go. What can you do with the seaweed? What can you do with any biomass? Any biomass you can ferment. And what do you get when you ferment biogas? You get biogas. We now know that on 1 hectare of sea, 1 hectare, which we exploit 3-dimensionally, that means 1 hectare, 25 meters deep. That's 3 dimensions. That when we have that kind of platform created, we can have up to 1,000 tons of seaweed forest growing. And when you have a seaweed forest growing, you create an adsorption. You create an absorption of all the microplastics, which you harvest, which you put in a digester, you take the gas out, then you have the solids left over, which, by the way, is 50% phosphates. You know how we normally get phosphates? Mining. So we get biophosphates, we're getting biogas, and the phosphates, we do a simple centrifuge, and we're getting the microplastics out. It's that simple, that's embarrassing. I mean, could we make it a bit more difficult? Could we have some more electronics and some more artificial intelligence and some flashing lights on there? But you know, in nature, nothing is very flashy. Everything is very simple and basic, so that it can always work. With 1,000 tons of seaweed, biomass per hectare per year, how does that compare with palm oil or soya? I mean, soya oil today, you can get 4 or 5 tons a hectare. Palm oil, you can get 25 tons a hectare. We're doing 1,000. You see how nature generates abundance? And we didn't know it was going to be so abundant. We were just obsessed by getting microplastics out of the ocean. And by putting ourselves on the wave of energy, because there's such a sensibility today in the world that we got to get these microplastics out of the world, that there is a desire to look at it seriously. And by the way, once you start, then you find out, just like the wolves are changing the rivers, we are changing the world of gas. With 4,500 square kilometers, 4,500 square kilometers in Morocco, we can supply the whole country with natural gas from seaweeds that were planted to get the microplastics out. When you look at microplastics, you get depressed. You're worried about your liver now and your mummification process you're going through by eating everything packaged in plastics. And then at once you realize that, oh, we can do all of this. We can convert a country into biogas only. And 4,500 square kilometers may sound a lot, but you know how much genetically modified corn is being farmed in the world? 6 million square kilometers. So we're not even 0.1% of what genetically modified corn is doing in the world, and we do that, we can take a country off the microplastics. And when you do that, who's benefiting? The fishes, of course. So this is the kind of thinking that we apply, and I can entertain you, not for 40 minutes, but for 40 days. It's like fasting, but thinking positive. It's very important that we realize that a few changes turn an economy upside down. You know, this economy is so fragile that when the President of America tweets, everything is shivering. It's amazing. I mean, the President of America tweets and the world is shivering. I mean, and the dollar drops or rises by 3-4% because he tweets. I mean, isn't it indicating it's a bit too fragile, a bit too sensitive? Let's get down to basics again, like food, water, housing, energy, health, education, ethics. Could we just limit ourselves to that instead of getting worried about a war between China and America on the basis of a tweet? And I think this is key to us, is that we realize that there's so many opportunities to turn that economy in another direction, provided we're ready to think different. Today, the economy, including that green economy, today that economy is an economy based on producing more of the same, always cheaper. With raw materials you get from anywhere, anytime, at any price, whatever the environmental cost. And in order to be cheaper, you have only one option: exploit nature, pollute, and exploit the workers. Cheap. That's the only way you can do it, because if you, as Serbians, have to compete against the Chinese, the Bangladeshis, the Indians, and the Brazilians, I wish you good luck. And I wish you so much good luck that we all know it's gonna fail. So why continue doing the same if you know you're failing? I mean, according to Einstein, this is stupidity. Doing more of the same, expecting different results, is stupid. You know that you're doing a great effort, but it's not leading you anywhere, so change the way you're doing it. And so that's where I'm saying that the green economy that we have trumpeted and heralded and celebrated, and at every conference we are pledging to create the green economy. After 40 years of work for the green economy, we haven't gotten anywhere. We have done less bad, we've done nothing good. But the green economy is a problem not because we want the greeniness. The green economy is a problem because we accept an economic model that is incapable of bringing us to a development at a human scale and that strengthens communities. We have an economic system where, by wanting to be always cheaper than anyone else, you have created an economy where whatever is good for you and whatever is good for the environment is expensive. How do we justify that logic? I don't know. I mean, I cannot stand up in a conference anymore and say, oh, I love the green economy. No, I've been fighting for that green economy for 30 years, but 10 years ago I realized it was not going anywhere. And so therefore, the blue economy's core proposal is that we have to use what we have. We focus on generating value, and we respond to basic needs of everyone, generating jobs. I mean, it's not difficult. I can say it in 15 seconds. The key is how do we put it into practice, and that's where, of course, the wonderful experience with Ivanka comes in, and the mushroom farming and so on. Because what we realize is that we have forgotten how nature works. I mean, we've forgotten that in nature there are 5 kingdoms, or realms if you don't like the kings. There are animals, there are plants, there are fungi, there are algae, and there are bacteria. And unless you integrate in your productive system all 5, you will never be able to move to abundance. You will always have poverty. Poverty is not just because we have a monoculture. Poverty is also because within our monoculture we only use one thing. And we focus on that one thing. So when you're farming rice, we only want a grain of rice. Why don't you want the spirulina that is growing wild into your water? I mean, why do you insist on getting rid of the spirulina? I mean, any rice farmer for the past 2,000 years minus 50 knows that you have this scum growing on your irrigation water, and that scum is what you need to give to the kids so that they will grow strong. And without having the name for it, it's called spirulina. And we call it scum because the guy who was genetically manipulating rice had no clue what the scum was all about, because he only or she only knows rice and has lost the vision that the ecosystem of rice farming always includes microalgae. Always. And if you see any of the old farming systems in Asia, they will put the grass carp into the irrigation water, and they will put frogs and ducks in there to make certain they will all create this wonderful excrement, which in English we call poo and pee, and make certain that it gets nicely, very nicely enriched with all the nitrogen that these other species are providing, so that next year it doesn't need to have fertilizers. That system is so well known, and then we ask for a genetically modified rice in the first place to avoid people turning blind. I don't get it. Why are people turning blind when they're eating rice? Because they're not eating the spirulina in the first place. So instead of getting Syngenta to develop for you a genetically modified rice where they injected some beta-carotene to avoid blindness, why don't you just pay the farmer a little bit extra and get the spirulina? Actually, the farmer will make more money on the spirulina growing onto the rice water than they would ever get from the rice. You know, this is what we have lost. We are so obsessed in this economic model where we produce more of the same, always cheaper, that we have lost all the opportunities to generate more revenue with what we have. And that is the core of the blue economy. Can we rediscover this incredible symbiosis between spirulina and rice? Can we finally have all the rice farms become spirulina farms? Instead of having these spirulina farms that pop up in America, in Hawaii in particular, where they're doing artificial feed, artificial oxygen, artificial greenhouses, in order to produce spirulina they can sell at high margins. The world market price for spirulina wholesale is $16 a kilo dry. We can produce it with the rice farmers for $0.50. What nice if we could offer the world cheap spirulina. That is actually what we are after. We want people to be happy and healthy and have the best at the lowest price, not the best at the highest price. That needs to be inverted when it comes to health, when it comes to nutrition. Healthy nutrition has to be calculated on the basis of what you're really offering. So we launched an initiative now 25 years ago, thanks to an amazing farmer and butcher, Karl Ludwig Schweizfurt. Who knows Karl Ludwig Schweizfurt? You know Herta, the sausages? Well, he's the one who did sausages. He was killing 25,000 pigs a week to get the sausages to everyone. And at some point in his life, his kid said, you can be a rich man, but I don't want any of your money because it's 25,000 pigs a week that are being slaughtered in inhumane conditions, and we don't want to know. That was a shock for Karl Ludwig. Fast forward today, Karl Ludwig and his family has perhaps the most interesting farm in Europe. They defied all the rules of the European Union because the European Union has done everything it can to protect the industrialized system, so Europe can compete in the world. What are they doing? They have taken this pig that takes more than a year to grow to maturity. According to the traditional logic, he must be bankrupt by now because the pigs are slaughtered after 4.5 to 5 months now. We have developed this craft food, this powerful food for the pigs, so that the pig grows fat in 4.5 to 5 months. And if you don't do that, you don't compete on the market. You don't even get subsidies from the European Union if you don't do the industrial model, the productive model, the scientifically driven model. What is interesting is that when you have a pig growing over more than a year, the pig will naturally develop omega-3. Actually, a pig that has lived for a year and 2 months will have more omega-3 than salmon, which only gets the omega-3 because we've overfished Peruvian anchovies and herrings and we fed them. Now, what is the base of the story I want to tell you? We're selling pork at the same price as salmon. That's times 3. So how come that the Norwegians succeed to cage farm lice-enriched salmon, genetically manipulated, now approved in America, and you all buy it because it has omega-3, which it got from the fish that was over-harvested in Peru? We have only 5-6 years left, and now the new feed for the salmon is with soy, genetically modified soy, together with a bit of herring, in order to get omega-3, and you pay a premium price for that fish? I don't get it. But now we have the pigs who naturally have that omega-3, and in Germany, in Munich, we now have the first 34 shops that sell pork at the same price as salmon. You know what it means for a farmer? You know what it means, times 3? I mean, this farmer is going to go on holidays now. But there was something else that was realized. Something else that was fascinating that was observed. Is that normally today pigs are raised in cages. And when pigs are raised in cages, they get a bit upset. And when young boys are upset with each other and bored, they start to fight. So pigs don't fight, they bite each other's tails. So since pigs started to bite each other's tails, today any pig farmer will cut off the tail so they can't bite it off anymore. We have in the European Union a new law that prescribes you can't cut the tail of a dog anymore. That has to be the natural one. But we can cut off the tail of a pig because they bite each other. I don't get the logic. But now what is the best way to keep a pig happy? Is to ensure that it lives together with a chicken. Pigs and chickens love each other. Why? Well, they've always lived together. It's only the last 20, 30 years we've told them to be separated. But a pig who loves the chicken because the chicken will eat all the parasites and all the insects. And so you have a pig around, if you have a chicken around the pig will be healthier. We even went as far as to create houses where the pigs live on the ground floor and the chickens on the second floor. And the European Union said that's prohibited. And you know what we said? Turn off the camera. Turn off the camera. On one condition. The pigs go to the toilet before they get into the house. Did you know you can teach a pig in 3 days to go to the toilet? I mean, it took me, according to my mom, it took me 6 weeks. I mean, a pig in 3 days, me 6 weeks, come on. So we now have a strategy that I've learned from the Chinese, that every pig learns how to go to the toilet, and when a pig goes to the toilet, what have you done? You've just eliminated 60% of the cost of raising a pig. Because no one needs to clean up after the pigs. And now with the pigs who go to the toilet, it's like dad not having to change diapers. I mean, he loves coming home and takes care of the kids. You ask dad to take care of the diapers, he comes late. He's working hard. You know, it is something that is so basic, but what is the result? The result is that now we have chickens on the second floor who in the winter in Munich are kept nicely warm by the pigs below, and they lay 30% more eggs without getting 30% more food. You know what it is? 60% cut in labor costs, 30% increase in egg laying, and they're all organic and natural. And then you can sell it for the same price as salmon. The result is that a 100-hectare farm is doing 20 million turnover. Have you heard of farmers of 100 hectares turning over 20 million euro? It doesn't exist. Well, it does exist. Why? Because we defied every possible rule the European Union imposed. And we're going back to basics of health, happiness, as well for the animals, as for the workers, as for the farmers. And I think this is where we need to do. We need to defy the system sometimes, not by protesting on the streets on Friday and Thursday, by doing things different. And I hope that very soon we will have the culture of doing things different, having more fun, defying, learning, innovating, changing, and continuously be surprised about the amazing easiness of changing the economy around from one that we have today to the one we want. Thank you.